Hey Saints, welcome back to the Saints TV YouTube channel. Welcome to Saints TV Weekly for October 31st, 2022. It's been a big week at the footy club. It's been a huge week, really. One of the biggest since I've been doing the channel. So we'll get straight into it. I mean, this is stuff that we've been talking about for the last week anyway, but we're going to cover off all the big news and all the key talking points from the last 7 days at the footy club. Obviously, the biggest one is what happened exactly a week ago today, the return of Ross Lyon as senior coach of the footy club. This was, I guess, pretty expected after the previous couple of days last week. All the news leaking, Ross meeting with the club, meeting with the president, meeting with the CEO, and basically our interview process that we weren't going to be interviewing anyone else. And that was clarified once the announcement was made by Andrew Bassett, basically saying that the review had occurred, the internal review and external review, and that identified the characteristics of someone like a Ross Lyon to be our new coach, and then he was pretty much the one man that we wanted, and we got him. So that's kind of that big piece of news. I think the most interesting thing I've noticed since the announcement last week is that from the announcement, there was a fair bit of negativity. There was a fair bit of saying is quite reluctant to get on board with this, understood this as to why Ross would be brought back into the St Kilda world. And since then, the more coverage that Ross has gotten, the more interviews he's done over SEN, radio interviews since he's been announced, his press conference on the Monday, as well as some little, bite-sized interviews that the club has released on the website since the announcement. I've spoken to a lot of people, and a lot of people have basically said, when it happened, I wasn't really that keen, and kind of hearing the way Ross has been talking about the footy club, the way he's been supporting it, the way he's been backing it up, I'm kind of on board now, and I'm kind of excited to see where this goes, and that's really great to see. We all need to get behind this. So to hear some people's opinions change, they had their vision of Ross and what he was like when he left us, and some people hold him fully accountable for, I guess, the last 10 years of, how our list was when he left. And they've turned a corner, hearing him and I guess his thoughts and how ruthless he wants to be, but also the change in his tone, the change in his approach, because he's not quite the same man as he was 10 years ago. So that's a really exciting sign. I'm glad to hear that Sainers are getting a bit more on board, and I'm curious to hear in the comments, Sainers, if you're one of them, if you were kind of a bit reluctant initially, and now you've, I guess, had a bit of a change of heart. I'd love to hear as to why, what's caused that change of heart. Is it his press conference? Is it his vision? What is it about the last week that has, I guess, changed your mind on this appointment? Love to hear your thoughts. The other big set of news, it continued the next day, literally 24 hours later after the Ross Lyon announcement. Something that I broke on the Monday that I think most people were kind of hoping would happen at some point is the return of Robert Harvey. So we know Robert Harvey's been at Collingwood for a while. He was at Hawthorn. And then I think he got a call the Friday before. So the Friday, a couple of days before Ross was even announced, he had spoken to Ross. So Ross was already on the phones trying to get some, organise his team. And by the Tuesday, he was announced, Robert Harvey, as an assistant coach. So we still don't really have a forward line coach, I believe. It wouldn't surprise me if Robert Harvey was potentially someone that could do that, because his style is quite attacking. At Collingwood, he was very much in charge of that transition from back to front. That's something that I think we can improve in. So hopefully he brings a bit of expertise there. And I think it just makes for a really great story in our 150th year that we've got Ross Lyon back, we've got Robert Harvey. Obviously, we've got Lenny Hayes back. So we've got, three very big St Kilda men back in the box. And you wouldn't have believed that a year ago if I had told you that those three would be back at the footy club together in our 150th year, and Brett Ratten wouldn't be part of it. So things change very fast. And it's really good to have Robert Harvey back. I think some people are a bit unsure about whether we're getting a bit too sentimental with these appointments, but I'd like to think that although they are quite sentimental, I think that all three, Lenny has had his internships at some other clubs and been very good there as assistant coaches. Robert Harvey's done a fair stint as assistant coach. And obviously Ross Lyon is Ross Lyon. He's done, plenty at other clubs, including St Kilda already. So I think all three are going to benefit the club. I think that's the thing, is that every appointment, I think, has looked to improve the club, strengthen it off the field. And it's already clearly, seeped all the way down to some players who have come back to preseason early. They've hit the gym. They're on the weights room already. Ross Lyon's already very impressed with a bunch of players, in particular Marcus Winhager. Hunter Clark's already back, and there's been a lot of talk about him leaving, going to North Melbourne previously. So it's great to see that he's really taken this on board. And obviously there's been some other smaller changes, so some coach turnovers as well. And I think there was one late last week in our coaching panel with our development coach, Ben Jacobs, leaving. I think he was only around for basically a year, and he's gone to join Essendon. He's an ex-North Melbourne and Port Adelaide player, and he's joining Brad Scott at Essendon from next year onwards. So I think there is an opening there in development for St Kilda. I think that was a key area that Ross Lyon wanted to improve. So I think that, with Ben Jacobs leaving to join Essendon, I think that's obviously something that Ross Lyon has had a big input in, and I'm just curious to see who we get to replace him. And then on top of that, I think obviously you have got James Gallagher, who is our list manager, and I think he's moved to Adelaide, I believe, and I don't think Ross Lyon's a big fan of him continuing that remotely. I think Ross wants everyone on deck, and I think that's probably another position that I wouldn't surprise to see change in the next 7 days or so. So it's good to see that Ross is already less than a week in, basically, and he's got his Robert Harveys in. He's already, I guess, had an input into development. And from reports, Matthew Lloyd mentioned a couple of days ago that, he spent a lot of time chatting to players, chatting to the team, and got, I guess, expressing his vision on the footy club, which is amazing. In only 7 days, he's done that. So it's a complete change of tact for the footy club. When you think of the position we were in 2 weeks ago and now where we're at now, complete night and day. It's a big change and a really exciting one, I'd like to think. Now for some general news, Fox Sports has done kind of its premiership window predictor. These things are always interesting because they're always a fair way off. I'll go through ours. So they've mentioned for us that the Saints are a hard side to gauge, with that perhaps no more evident than in the conflicting views the club hierarchy have had about where exactly the list is at. There are some promising prospects on the list who will continue to grow, with Max King, Wanganeen Malira and Marcus Winhager key among them. If they begin to hit their straps in a couple of years, then there may be some good overlap from 2025 onwards with them and the likes of Jack Steele, Brad Hill and Brad Crouch being somewhere near their best and pushing for success before officially handing over the baton. Premiership window 2025 to 2027. I think that could be accurate, but like Ross Lyon says, there's no timings on these things. They just happen. You put in the work and then they happen. You don't look at a calendar and go, okay, so there's 2023, 2024. Okay, 2025 is when we're contending. Ross will just want us contending as quickly as possible. So it could be as soon as next year. It could be 2024. 2025, I don't know. You'd want to see us climb the ladder before then, I'd like to think. I don't think we're here. That's already, 1, 2. That's the third season of Ross Lyon's 4-year contract. I think you'd want to be, not maybe premiership contending, but you'd want to be close enough to top 4 that you've got some hope before then. So that's their predictor. I think that's interesting. A lot of other clubs, obviously that have made finals this year, 2023, 2024, we're 2025. I think if we draft well this year and we see some development internally next year, they could climb back and bring it back another year. So now to AFLW. The season wrapped up yesterday. The girls went down against the Crows. They lost by 16 points to Premiership fancy Adelaide. So they were fairly competitive against a pretty damn good team. Unfortunately, that was the end of their season. They finished at 3-7, and I think if you look at the ladder, they finished 13th. 10 games played, 3 wins, 7 losses. Unfortunately, we only had 1 win in our last 8 games. We started the year 2-0, which was great, and from that point on, we went 1-8, which is not a really great way to finish the season, or 1-7, 82% percentage. Sarah should be back Tuesday, Wednesday this week to cover off that game in more detail and obviously summarize the entire season and what we did well, where we improved, and obviously there's a fair bit of work to do and where that improvement will come from as well. Now for question time. Question time. I've I've got a few questions here from some Sainers. Let's see what they reckon. This one's from Josh. Who should be our forward coach? If it's not going to be Robert Harvey, I did hear that Ross Lyon was chatting to someone like an Adam Schneider, which could be interesting. But I think there's definitely a few options out there. Although I think, Robert Harvey could be one. Nick Riewoldt would be amazing, but obviously no coaching experience, and I don't think Nick is too keen on getting back into the club in that regard. It's up in the air. I think, it's going to be very interesting to see who we announce in that position. Park Bench Philosophers is asking me lager or pale ale. Yeah, you're not going to be happy with this answer, mate. I don't drink beer, so neither. I'm a red wine and a Canadian Club Dry sort of guy. Rob is asking, who is set to have a breakout season in 2023? Max King is a breakout season every year for me. I think Marcus Windhager could very much have a breakout season, and I think that we keep forgetting, but Jack Hayes, I think if he can get a full season in, I think he could be massive for us. So I'm really excited to see what Jack Hayes does at the footy club next year once he comes back from injury. And I guess, he's probably the answer to the next question as well. From Judy, who will ruck alongside Rowan Marshall? I think that Ross Lyon generally does like having two rucks. I don't think it's going to be Max Heath, and I don't think it's going to be Tom Campbell. I think that Jack Hayes proved that he can ruck and also be very dangerous forward. And I think it's very handy to have two rucks that are equally dangerous in the ruck versus, resting forward. And I don't think Max Heath, obviously he's not debuted yet, so that'll be eased in. And I think Tom Campbell's probably better in the ruck than he is forward. So I think to be a bit more attacking, to be a bit more aggressive. And I think on paper that, Jack Hayes is probably just a better player compared to the other two. No disrespect to them. I think Rowan Marshall, Jack Hayes combination is pretty dynamic, pretty exciting, and pretty dangerous. So I'd like to think that we'd go with that as the combination for next year. That's Sainers. That's Saints TV Weekly. A nice quick one. Monday before Cup Day tomorrow, so hopefully you're all having a great Monday and enjoy the rest of your week. As I always say, if you want to follow us on our platforms, at Saints TV Pod on Instagram, Saints TV TikTok on TikTok, and then obviously on Facebook we're Saints TV as well. So follow us on all those, as well as commenting, liking this video, and most importantly subscribing, and you'll get notified on all future videos during the week. And we've got plenty of content in the pipeline for you Sainers out there, talking about Ross, talking about halves, talking about all the appointments, all the big news in preparation for a big off season and then a big 2023 next year. So I'll leave it there, Sainers. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, go you mighty Sainers. See you guys.